Guys? Austin back and again with another video. Today, guys, I'm ranking all the Star Wars movies, and I know a bunch of people are passionate about Star Wars, so leave your ranking down below, but be respectful in the comments. These are just movies, and, we'll have a nice discussion down below, and enjoy the video. Alright, guys, coming in at last place will have to be Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, just because I feel like everyone is so wooden in this movie. Like, everyone is literally like wood. Like, they don't act. Like, no one really cares. They talk like they're so fancy. And I remember in the original trilogy, like episode 4 through 6, they just talked like normal people. But in this movie, they just talk like space nerds. So yeah. And surprisingly, I think Jar Jar Binks is the best part of this movie because he's the only one that actually gives a performance, is actually like acting. So that's my stance on Jar Jar Binks. And yeah, this movie is just really boring and it's basically pointless to the story. Alright, guys, next up on our list is probably going to be the movie after this, which I think is slightly better. Because there's more like actual acting, because Obi-Wan is really good in this movie. And that's probably the only good thing besides like the music. And this movie would be Attack of the Clones. It comes right after this one. Both these movies are basically pointless because the only like actual one that like matters in this trilogy is episode 3, because that's the one where Anakin turns into Darth Vader. So that's probably the only one that really matters if you're like watching them, if you're like a new Star Wars geek. So yeah, nothing really to say. Pretty much just the same problems about episode 1. There's just boring and a lot of political talk and everything. And yeah, there's just not many good action scenes. When the clones actually, like, when the battles actually happen, they're just not even that good. I mean, they're kind of underwhelming. For a movie that's called Attack of the Clones, there's not really much attacking. And yeah, there's much to be desired about this movie, and it's not that good. So yeah. Alright, this next one might be kind of controversial, but coming in next is Solo: A Star Wars Story. I'm not saying this is really a bad movie, it's just so, like, underwhelming. And I know, coming from me, which Han Solo's my favorite character. He might not be anymore, but he was my favorite character at the time when I watched this movie. And I'm just gotta say, it's kind of fun, I guess, but, like, it's really forgettable. Like, as soon as I walked out, actually, I probably couldn't even tell you what happens in the movie because, like, kind of forgot. But the performance from Lando was pretty good. I feel like he was kind of doing an impression of Lando in the originals, kind of. And I felt like Han Solo was pretty good, but it just felt like this movie is just so forgettable, and the villains were forgettable, and just, I don't know. I just kind of forget about it. Like, when I was doing this, I just kind of forgot about this movie. I was like, oh yeah, this movie's actually a thing, So, yeah, it's just kind of underwhelming. So, yeah, Solo: Star Wars Story. Alright, guys, coming in and next is Revenge of the Sith. I think this movie is just a little bit better. I was just kind of deciding which one is better. And in my opinion, Revenge of the Sith is better because it just launches you right into the action with Anakin and Obi-Wan for the first time in the trilogy actually, like, friends. Like, the first two ones, like, they're supposed to be the best friends. You're supposed to feel at the end of the movie. But in the first two ones, the prequels, they weren't friends at all. I like that they were friends in this one. But the only problem is it's the last movie in the trilogy. And this is the one where he turns to Darth Vader. So it's a big shift from him being like buddies with Obi-Wan in the beginning and to him being Darth Vader. And I also don't like that they separated Obi-Wan and Anakin throughout the movie, but the only reason I'm putting this above Solo is because of the action scenes. I think they're handled pretty well in this movie, and there's actually a lot of action and not too much like political stuff in the other movies, which is good for me because sometimes I get like impatient with movies. So yeah, that's what I think of this. I like Anakin and Obi-Wan in this, and the final battle is one of the best final battles like ever in Star Wars, besides the one in Return of the Jedi. So that is Revenge of the Sith. Alright, guys, coming in after Revenge of the Sith, in my opinion, would be Episode 8, The Last Jedi. it's not like everything in this movie is wrong. I feel like people just like hate on it a bit too much because like there is some good things. I like that they killed Snoke because he wasn't an interesting character to begin with. So I don't really mind that in the movie. But the thing I'm like kind of get mad about is the plot lines of Finn and Poe. They're so bad. Like the plot lines of Finn and Poe, those characters are treated so bad in this movie. And so is Luke. Like, Luke is not himself. And basically, I don't like the character of Luke in this one. He just threw his father's lightsaber behind him. Like, come on. I feel like that's just kind of, like, not something he would do, even if he did go on the next one. The one scene I can compliment in this movie is when Rey and Kylo Ren, Reylo fans, comment below, is when they fight in the throne room and kill Snoke. I am a big fan of their kind of like plot line in the story, but Finn and Poe were handled terribly, as I said earlier, in this movie. I mean, Poe goes with Rose in this casino planet for pretty much like so much of the movie, and Finn and Poe are separated, and they're the best together in episode 7. I'll get to the positives on episode 7 about that, but they are so good together, and they just wasted their characters. And the whole Holdo thing with Poe is just something for another video. Really angering. So, episode 8 coming in. Alright, guys, coming in after episode 8 would be episode 7, The Force Awakens. Let's go with the positives, then we'll go with the negatives. So, a couple positives of this movie are, the new characters are pretty good. I feel like, Rey's a bit too overpowered in this one, and it's also a problem in the episode 9, which we'll get to later. And she's a bit too overpowered, but I feel like Finn and Poe were really good in this as well. I like in episode 9 that they're together way more often, but in this one you can see like it's starting to happen, like good relationship between them. And then the end fight is kind of underwhelming, but we're getting into the positives, so I have to have one more positive. I really actually kind of liked Han Solo in this. His mentor role was pretty good, and I like how he wasn't too like preachy with like the Force or anything. And I like that he was like it was a different approach to where Obi-Wan was. He's a bit less wise, which I kind of like. And even though I kind of think he might have died, I think he should have died in Return of the Jedi. I really liked him in this movie. Not Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, but I really liked him in this movie. The only problem I really have is that it's kind of a rewrite of The New Hope, but I think they kind of need to do that. For the first one, they always need to kind of like play it safe. But all around, it's a fun movie. I mean, it's an easy movie to watch, just enjoyable. And yeah, episode 7. Alright, guys, coming in after episode 7 is Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. This is definitely the best of the spin-offs. Let's go with the negatives first, why not? The only negative I really have with this movie is some of the characters are underdeveloped, but some of the characters are really good in this one, like the one Force, like, he's not a Jedi, but he's kind of, like, wise in the Force, and I really like him. His sidekick, like, the guy with just the blaster, I don't even know any of their names, by the way, so that's also negative, like, you kind of don't know the characters that much, but it doesn't really matter, because this movie is actually, like, pretty good. And, like, the whole thing at the end where they all died, like, I kind of actually liked the end scene. Like, that's one of my favorite end scenes. It's, like, the action is really good, and, yeah, and some of the characters are good. Like, I get that people say in this movie, like, the characters are bad, but not all the characters are bad. I feel like you're overlooking some of the characters. The droid character is really good, and, the main girl is, like, you can kind of see, like, she had a bit of a story arc, which I'm kind of surprised for, like, a movie with so many characters, and they balance the characters pretty good. Like, I feel like they got kind of an equal amount of screen time, which you gotta love, and the end scene is just so good when all of them die, like, all their deaths, and it's just a very heroic movie, and I like movies that are in between episode 3 and 4, and I forgot to say that in the positives of Solo, but I like movies that are, like, in between episode 3 and 4, and the end scene of Darth Vader, so epic. But yeah, it's just a fun movie. It's just, like, an enjoyable movie, like the last one. I mean, Like, there's nothing really that bad to say about it. There's nothing that pulls it back too much. It's just a really good movie. So, if you like Star Wars, I definitely recommend Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. All right, guys, I realize this might be a bit controversial, but coming in next is Episode 9. Now, do know, I do think the original trilogy is miles better than this, but I think this is just the best out of a non-original trilogy movie. So, I know this is kind of controversial since it's as pretty much as divisive as Last Jedi, because it's kind of the other way around, because Last Jedi, the critics loved it, but the audiences were a bit divided. It's completely the other way around, and I personally liked it. I'm on the side of people who actually like the movie, but let's just go to our problems first. I only had a couple problems with this movie. The one problem is, like, it was kind of annoying that they brought the Emperor back, because like it kind of underlies Darth Vader killing him at the end of Return of the Jedi. But I'd take the Emperor over Snoke any day, because he's just a way better villain and is way more menacing than Snoke, in my opinion. And yeah, so I'm trying to think of any other problems I have with this. Oh yeah, so I feel like Rey is a bit too overpowered. Like, if you say like, oh, Rey's overpowered in this movie, I kind of get where you're coming from, but yeah, she's a bit overpowered in this movie, and that's my kind of only problems. But this is a big positive. Like, all the characters are together in this movie. I like that you have Rey, Poe, Finn, R2-D2, BB-8, and Chewie in this movie. And I love that the whole gang is together, because they bounce off pretty good. And this is the first time we see Rey and Poe together in the movies. So yeah, there's nothing really to hate about it. It was a satisfying end to the Skywalker saga. I like that you saw like all the original trilogy characters get their nice send off. Han, Luke, and Leia. Yeah, I just really liked how it ended. I'm not gonna get too much spoilery, but I'll do a spoiler review maybe later. But I like how it ended, and I defend this movie completely. Rise of Skywalker. Alright, guys, here comes the positive reviews with the original trilogy, and I think all these movies come to pretty much perfect. But I do have some minor problems with this. Coming in is Return of the Jedi. I think the whole fan base kind of agrees it's the weakest of the trilogy, which I agree. And yeah, in my opinion, even though Han Solo is like my favorite character, kind of, I feel like he shouldn't have died in Empire Strikes Back, which is the movie before this. But we'll get to that. We're going to get to Empire Strikes Back. But I feel like Han is kind of useless in this movie. Like, he's just not himself. But the beginning Tatooine scene is really good with Jabba. I think Jabba is a very menacing villain. And Luke's plan was something, you know? And I really liked the opening. The opening just, boom, straight into action. And then we get to Ewok, where I feel like, where the Ewok planet, you don't get to Ewok, but I feel like that plot line's a bit weak, but it's good action. Like, you can't deny that it's one of the best final battles, kind of. I feel like Rogue One's a slightly better final battle, but the reason I put this higher than, like, most people do is because Luke and Darth Vader's final fight is the best fight in Star Wars, just ever. Their final fight in Return of the Jedi it's like a hair better than Empire Strikes Back's fight, but it's pretty much a amazing fight. You have the Emperor trying to tempt Luke, and then you get that empowering moment where he throws away his lightsaber and just says, "I'll never join the dark side." And then you see Darth Vader decide if he wants to stay with the Emperor or go with Luke. He ultimately kills the Emperor, which is also, earlier I said a problem with Episode 9, because I thought, like, maybe they shouldn't have brought back the Emperor, because, like, it kind of underlies Darth Vader killing him. But it's a great end to the trilogy. It's just Luke and Darth Vader shine in this movie like they've never shined before. I like Luke. He, like, has some character development, because in the first two movies he was kind of whiny. In this one, he's a full, like, awesome Jedi Master. So, you gotta love this movie. It's the original trilogy, Return of the Jedi. Alright, guys, coming in next is A New Hope. It was originally called Star Wars when it first came out, because this is the first like Star Wars movie made, not in chronological order, but it's the first Star Wars movie ever made. And it's one of the best. It's the second best just because its age is just holding it back just a little bit because it's the first, and obviously the lightsaber battles weren't as good as they are nowadays. But that's the only real problem. Like, the pacing in this movie is pretty much perfect. I like how it starts, like, kind of slow, and then it builds up, and then by the end, it's just going so fast, and I love the end space battle. It's just simple. It's a simple movie. It's simple and just good and sweet and just simple. It's the most simple Star Wars movie, but, like, the second best out of the whole thing. And you don't need to make much to make a good Star Wars movie. It's not that hard. Making this the prime example of a good Star Wars movie that's really simple and good. And every character is really good. They introduce Han Solo. He's probably the best in this movie. You can kind of argue maybe Empire Strikes Back. And then Luke is kind of a whiny character, but it's a good part to his character development where he goes from this to Return of the Jedi, where he's like a full-fledged Jedi Master. And yeah, I feel like this movie's really good, and it's just, come on. Everyone likes this movie. If you don't like this movie, I mean, what are you doing? So, yeah, New Hope, obviously. Alright, guys, you know I had to put it here. The movie right after New Hope, Empire Strikes Back. This movie is the best because I think it has even more character development than Return of the Jedi, which is saying a lot. Because you have Han, who, in the beginning of the movie, sacrifices things for his friends, even though he has a price on his head with Jabba. I forgot to mention that in A New Hope summary thing. But yeah, he has a price on his head, and he even sacrifices, like, freezing to death for his friend. And they also, Obi-Wan's ghost tells Luke to go see Yoda in Dagobah, where he went into exile in Revenge of the Sith. So he goes there, and I like Yoda. Like, Yoda is, like, he flips on the mentor, because usually the mentor's wise, and like Obi-Wan, and is wise. But Yoda seems to be, like, silly and funny, and he's really a good mentor. But then, like, you find out he's actually really wise and, like, really skilled in the Force. So, yeah, I like how they kind of subvert your expectations with Yoda. He's used really well in this movie. And also, Luke, at the end, goes for his friends instead of completing his training. And it's just, you see Luke's character starting to grow and, like, him kind of being a bit immature, kind of. And then he goes and fights Darth Vader, which this fight is really good. I mean, I don't think it's as good as Return of the Jedi is, but it's, like, close. It's really good. And the reveal of, I am your father, is really good, and you feel it. Like, this is the quintessential sequel. Like, when you think sequel, you think Empire Strikes Back. Because the first movie, you know, everyone wins, the Death Star's blown up, but no, sequel, whew, makes everything darker, and everything's just kind of not going well at the end of this movie. Because Han Solo's in Carbonite, which, I might add, I think Han Solo, Leia saying, I love you, and then Han Solo's like, I know, is, I think, like, the best scene in, like, Star Wars history, because you see Han go from, like, someone who just loves, like, likes money to committing his love to Leia. That's why I think Han should have died, even though Han is my favorite character. But, yeah, there's big character development for Han, big character development for Luke in this movie, and it's just the sequel. Like, it's just the best sequel ever. So, Return of the Empire Strikes Back coming in at first place.